Okay, welcome.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, welcome everyone. This session is going to be based on, oriented towards people that may be new users as well as just beginners. So the very first thing I would want to point to a new user is that we do have a manual online on your network drives. On that manual are all the different modules. I want to focus right now, of course you can go to the cost estimating manual, but I want to focus on Welcome New Client. This is a new folder that we have, and in that, one of the first things to get estimating up and running is a document called Implement Estimating. And what this will do is go through file by file. Now, well, when we install your system, we typically do step one, which is create the company file, but you see it actually includes the hotkeys that you're going to go into. So, but it goes step by step. For instance, the next step is creating your finished goods categories, of course, setting up your security and user IDs, and you're going to get into some of the estimating files, but you'll notice it's then going into the raw materials files, you know, individual each one of the different files. So it's actually a domino effect. Before you start estimating, you have to build all these different files that feed into the estimating. So that module, this documentation is under this Welcome New Client. But also under here are some important things like business forms. Where do you pick the business forms? For instance, the quote forms, the low tag forms, estimate printout form. There's also where do you store your CAD files. So there's a document here that explains where you store your CAD files and how you actually import a stored CAD image. Same thing with die images. So there's a separate file documentation how you store your die images. And you can see here on the estimating tab, it's a different binocular. You click that and then you can put a die image in. I'm going to be showing you these things during the presentation today. Our system also includes a lot of different pallet stacking patterns. This is out on your network drive, and this document here is just showing where those stacking patterns are. Today included, we will have this on YouTube so that you can refer to it later. But it's important to know that these, basic overview of our documentation are out here in separate folders. For instance, where are your box designs stored, both 2D and 3D images of your box design. And if you want to store them in a different location, these documents will explain where to store those. So that's really the beginning for beginners. The next thing I want to go through is just some of the file maintenance required before you actually start estimating. So you see here under the letter E, the first letter of each module is actually hotkey sensitive. So I could press the letter E, then the letter B, and I would see the estimating files. But clearly, one of the first, besides this general ledger company file, you're going to go to the vendor file, and you never start with building vendors. You want to build your payment types, because all these files, taxing authorities, all these files are going to go into vendors. You need vendors because you're going to put your cost in the raw materials file by vendor. Likewise, the customer file has to be built in order to create an estimate. And all these little files, all your trucks and your delivery zones have to be in the carrier file. So you're going to create these, if it's your own truck, you can cost that by MSF, pallet, or weight, and then there's a matrix. While I'm on this screen, I'm just going to start with the very top section of this. Every screen, we call these icons. Underneath of these, we call these tabs or folders. So the Browse tab always gives you a list of your records that you've created. The next tab gives you the details, and then the matrix, actually, let me go back to your truck. So here you can see I can have a bunch of delivery zones. A delivery zone could be a zip code. But if you think of a dartboard, and your plant is in the middle of the dartboard, the top of the dartboard is north, the bottom is south, east, and west, and then every ring around that circle could represent 25 miles, 50 miles, 75 miles. So you could actually have delivery zones north 25, north 50, north 100, northeast, south. So that's an option that people do, I see, use. And then we do have truck routing, which starts out with the estimate and moves to order processing, but you want to get all your freight zones, delivery zones, built before you actually add your customers, because you need to know the customer delivery zone. So all these little files, including the sales file, salesman's file, all your salesmen must be built with the appropriate commission percentages. This all flows into estimating. And then, of course, you're going to go to your customer file, and when you're building a customer, you're going to see these fields, such as sales rep, customer type, payment terms. So all those little files get built first, and then you build your customer. You will have a customer for yourself. That customer I'm going to go to in our system is Advanced Packaging Corp for this demo. And what you'll notice is this customer X. You need one customer X in your company. That'll be your box plant. So your box plant will be a customer in our system. And that has superpowers for a lot of different modules. But from a standpoint of adding customers, when you add a new customer, it uses a lot of the defaults from that box plant customer as your default, so you don't have to type that in on every customer. I'm going to go back to a customer that I have in our system. And when I get to the customer file, you have your basic information, but you also have things like overrun, underrun. From an estimating standpoint, what's his default markup? Also, you'll have unlimited ship-to locations. And each ship-to location has notes, but it also has your delivery zone. So what carrier, or is it your own truck for this particular ship-to, and what is the delivery zone? And also, what is the pallet? The pallet height, which comes from the raw materials file, but you're indicating the pallet here in this customer ship-to file, is used to maximize your palletization when we create an estimate. And then we also have some things for pricing from an estimating standpoint in the customer file, where you can have different markups based on the style and the square footage. So that's an option in the customer file. The other thing I want to point out in the customer file is you see this pencil, and that dictates that you have notes. If you put department notes, there's a lot of generic notes, but I'm not going to go into those. From an estimating standpoint, you see down here at the bottom, we can have group notes and department notes. I have a department note for printing press. Any department note that is added to the customer file automatically goes to every new estimate. So you can also create your own notes. For instance, I created this, you can create your own departments. I created this department called SN with the title Ship Notes, so I can add ship notes for every customer, and this will print on every job ticket. Now, we do have notes in the customer ship-to file, which prints on the bill of lading, but typically you want those notes on the factory ticket, so you have to create a department such as ship notes and put those notes in the customer file under this fountain, under this pencil. You see the little star on that pencil, that means there's notes for that customer. The other thing I want to point out is you have unlimited contacts in the customer file, and you can, by contact, you can have email addresses, which is important. You also have the little pencil again for unlimited notes for that contact, but you can indicate different business forms when you email, in this example, a quote form. If you're going to email a quote form, you would want to come down here and check anything related to quotes. And if you set that to yes, when you go to email a quote, this person will automatically get that quote. His name will be on the send to. So that's all leading into estimating. I want to go through the raw materials file. We have one file for all your raw materials. Of course, you're going to set up these other little files. You know, what is your plant? What is your warehouse? You're going to set up all your locations, even if it's a customer that you're shipping to on consignment, you want to set them up as a customer. Material types, raw material categories. These are just for reporting purposes, but all these little files must be built before you actually start adding your raw materials. So again, you've got icons at the top, you've got tab keys underneath, and down at the bottom we have radio buttons. If I wanted to look, and you'll learn the different material types, but if I click the material type radio button at the bottom, I can just type the letter B and it automatically is forced into there. If I put my cursor there and press and type the letter B, then I have to press my enter key. So this is all my materials. Now, if I want to find an item directly, I can just type item code and type something like 200C. And you'll notice you've got board information here, and you can see it asks for the material type, the cost type, and the category. Cost type is for general ledger purposes. Category is for reporting purposes. But of course, you're going to have your flute, your test. And you see I have nothing for the size because this is what we call an estimated material. An estimated material has no size because we buy it. It's for estimating purposes. In the then cost tab is where we put all our costs for pricing purposes. So the blank vendor can be a blend of all these vendors, but the cost for each vendor, when you click on this little tab, it changes the information, the pricing in here. And you can see I can say this is for corrugated supplies, and this is the last time I updated this cost, but I'm saying up to 5. Up to 5 what? Well, the purchase unit of measure is MSF, so that's 5 MSF. It's $80. And if I wanted a setup charge for that, I'd put $15 in. Down here on the bottom is my corrugator limitations. Very important if you want to estimate from a vendor that you can buy the sheet from. For instance, if we had a sheet that was 10 inches by something, this vendor would not appear for you to select to pull that cost for that estimate. So if you build this, it'll further stop you from placing an estimate for a vendor that cannot buy the board. But each vendor is defined in this then cost tab by material. And that's for all your materials, inks, glues, board, paper. Each vendor can have a different grid. And we also have best price, so we can find the best price for whatever the estimate quantity is. When I come to something like a real stock sheet, such as 50 by 80 down here, now you'll notice I actually have a size in here, and you'll notice it says real material. So we can actually, in estimating, the sheet cap button will actually pull the material with the best fit, so to minimize your waste. But again, you're going to build your cost grid. I might want to point out you can always copy, and that will copy all your vendor costs. So if it's the same cost, you know, for all your stock sheets, you can just keep copying it from maybe 200C or something else. But I'm going to go back to the material types just to show you inks as an example, and I've got all my inks. Notice how I'm consistent also for lookup purposes. I'm always putting the type of the ink and then the color next, and then the number of the color last. This way, if I wanted to search by the name down here, I click here, I can say GCMI blue, and all my blues will pop up. If you're not consistent in creating, now this all comes with your system, but the more consistent you are, the better you're going to be in estimating for using different materials. But what I want to point out is, as I'm on the ink material type, you notice the field changes. So when I go from, and I can scroll through with this arrow buttons at the bottom, each ink that's on this list. Pallets are material type D down here at the bottom. If I go down here to material type D, these are all your pallets. And as I said, the height, which we call the depth here, is what's going to be used for unitization when you do an estimate. So that's kind of an overall. All your materials are in here that are going to fill into your estimate. I do want to point out one other thing, which is really for corrugators. go, they got to find that material. So it's 200C. So in other words, if a corrugated box plant was going to estimate, they would typically just say 200C. Since I have sheets 200C, I put a little period at the end. What that has is it uses the BOM button. So this is where you're describing your paper combination, and you notice this median has a take-up factor. So that's going to extend the length of that material. It also has your laminate materials for making that paper. So that can be used for other options besides corrugated. It could be used for angle board, various other build-up pads, various types of honeycomb. So that BOM is not just for corrugated sheets. It can be used for different estimate types. So now I'm going to go, once you've built these other files, then lastly you're going to go to build the estimate files. I'm going to start at the very bottom. Attachments, you can obviously handholds. This is going to allow you to increase your setup times change your run speeds. If you're making partitions, it can eliminate estimating a partition that you don't have a die for or you can't make. So you can actually put in your partition die limitations in the attachments file. For corrugators, you have score types. Actually for sheet plants as well, if you want to transfer the score type as well as the board scoring allowances and sheet size, if you want to send them the score types as well, you will put in the score types from your corrugator here, and you can add that to the style file, or you can change it on the estimate. Machine routings, you want to create every combination of machine routing that your plant can make. This is a master machine routing list. And what I want to point to here is that you want to keep the machines that are the same machine in the same grouping. So in my 21 through 28, it has everything to do with the ZLM press. Since this demo system that I have, small quantities, maybe less than 2,000 square feet, is always going to have a slitter. So what I've always put the odd numbers with the slitter, you'll notice. Okay? But the routing may change, but the one number above the 21 is always the same routing, but you notice it doesn't have a slitter. So it's the ZLM and the gluer, just the ZLM, and the first one was with a slitter. So here's the slitter, ZLM, a box die cutter, and a gluer. The next one right under that is the same thing, but missing the slitter. And it's important because you're going to be using these numbers when you pre-route by style. So that's your routing. I'm just going to shoot over to the style file just to show you that real quick since I'm talking about it. On the routing tab, this is where the numbers are going. Now, I don't have it by a small MSF, but I could obviously copy it, and I could say, copy that to MSF. So now I have a routing for up to 2,000 square feet, and then anything beyond that is a separate routing. So what I'm saying is this one would have all odd numbers, and this routing would have all even numbers. If you build your routing table, organized. Now, what does this mean? What this means is if I'm less than 10 by 10, it's going to go to routing number 99. What is that? I'll press F1. It's a farm out. We can't make it. Okay, well, let's say if it's up to 30 inches and less than 25 inches, it's going to go to routing 22. That's your ZLM press and your hair gluer. So that's how it's going to automatically route. Now, you can always override from an estimating standpoint, but you'll notice it's by size and by style. Okay? Since I'm in the style file, I'm going to point out some other things. The flute, you see at the top right, if I click my arrow button, I can go through all my different flutes. So I could have a double wall flute, or I could have an A, B, B, C, and so forth. And then each one of these flutes that I go through, it'll show here. If I click the update button, then I put my scoring allowances in. So I put my default joint tab, and then my scoring allowances for each panel on the width. And this is if you wanted to put your score types in here from that score type file. And then as I save each one of these, it's going down this row. So now I'm on glue tab in, which is right here, which is 6/16, which is a 1-2-2-1. And of course, this all depends. So you're going to go through each one of these scoring panels criteria, and it all depends on how your box design is set up. In this case, it's length, width, and a joint tab. So your scoring panel applies to how your box design is. And you'll notice the box design is nothing more than an image that's out on my disk drive. And same thing with my 3D image. So I'm going to digress a little bit. I'm going to go back here to the box design file, which again, you can create as many designs from your CAD system. This comes with your system. But for instance, style number 1 is our RSC. And all it is an image out on my disk drive. You can enhance this image, add new images, but you create all your designs and then you assign a design to a style. But also what's important are the panel numbers. Where you put this is where it's going to print on your job ticket. So if you want that panel in the middle, you put that number in the middle. If you want it at the beginning, you put it at the beginning. But wherever those numbers align, that's where the actual numbers are going to print on your job ticket. So if this was a 10 by 10 by 10, that 10 would print right, the first 10 with the scoring would print there, second one here, third one there, fourth one. Same thing going down. Here's your half width panel, and there's your dimension where it's going to print. So I'm going a little bit in depth, but this is the details. Obviously, the first thing you're going to do is set up all your flutes. And we also have what we call stacking matrices, which basically says how many are we going to put on a pallet based on the stacking pattern. Now, we automatically do that. That's an override table I just showed you. The patterns are right here, and you can add as many as you want. But you can see if I click the image, this happens to be a chimney stack. This one happens to be 2 by 2. So we have our stacking matrix, which is going to tell you based on the pattern right here, based on what palette you're using, it's going to tell you what pattern our system's going to bring in. And you can change any of this, but this comes with the system. And what this is your knockdown flat. So length goes across and width goes down. So where your knockdown flat size on your estimate meets, that's where it pulls in your stacking pattern. And that's how it's going to calculate your unitization. So these are all files that you're going to build to begin with, right down to the machine file. And all the costs are, all the materials, all the machine costs, and then any kind of a markup. Your markups are in this cost control file. So you've got some default, like Sync is actually short for Flexo Ink. I could say Rat Sync, but it's just Sync. Flexo Ink, and a default palette, default bundling, and here's all kinds of default markups. Whether it's a manufacturer box or a farm out, you can have different markups for finished good handling, raw material handling, warehousing. These are special markups. It could be something like a shipping and handling charge, which is the default. And then you could actually put a dollar amount in here, and you would click the dollar amount, or you could put a percentage in and say it's 1% of the value. But you could add up to 3 of those, and then on the right-hand side, we have general, selling, and administrative markups. The reason you have to see 2 matrices is this is up to $100, up to $500, up to $1,000. So in other words, we're marking up material 20% if the cost of all the materials is less than $100. Less than $500 is 15%, and so forth. Now on this side, it's the cost of conversion. That's why it says labor. So you don't have to use these grids at all. You don't have to mark up anything. But these all basically generally go into full cost. Your out-of-pocket costs are your material and your labor. Now we do have options down here for this S1, S2, freight, GS&A. You can actually include them in factory cost if you wanted to. Factory cost is what's going to be the cost of finished goods. So when you have a finished goods cost report, it's factory cost. So all these files are going to get built, the machine file included. You're going to build all your machines, and every machine is going to have your limitations, starting with your labor rate, your crew size, which you can vary your crew size, as you can see, based on square footage. So bigger boxes may have a larger crew size. So you can do that for setup and run, and then you're going to have your setup charge, your variable overhead, fixed overhead, and a full cost. And then these are all your limitations on whether or not you can make that box, including over here. This happens to be, let's go to a printing press. Again, you got your radio buttons down here. So if I wanted to find a ZLM printing press as an example, down here on the bottom, it says it's a flexo press. Also notice you have help at the bottom of every screen. If you want any extra help on any field, when you're highlighted in that field, just press the F3 key and it'll give you help. So in this case, it says, oh, okay, what does that mean? Well, O is for an offset press. You can see F is for a flexo, letter press, and all the different press types, but you're flexo, and then you've got various things for wash up and so forth. Now, you're going to have your machine standards in here. You can have different standards for different styles. Then you define what you want your standards to be for setup, run, and spoolage, and that's dictated down here. So here you're seeing my make, ready, or setup is based on colors and die number up. Run spoolage is the colors and sheets. So as an example, if I went to the spoolage, it's number of colors, number of sheets. As the number of colors increases, my percentage of waste increases, but as the number of sheets increase, it goes down for each column. Same thing you're going to have similar for run. You're going to have run speeds based on an X and a Y grid. Typically it's width and length, but then you can vary that based on run quantity, caliper. So in this caliper actually reflects micro flutes are typically less than 1 caliper. Is going to slow the machine down 10%. My single face BC, which is what this grid is based on, is not going to have any effect. Then double wall, which is typically less than 0.3 in thickness, 35% reduction. Triple wall, 65% reduction. It's going to reduce this speed on this grid. So all this is going to flow into estimating. I know I'm not teaching you estimating yet, but you need to understand all these files that are going to feed into the estimate. So now I'm going to go to the estimating system, and of course you've got reports, and you've got other files such as your plates and dies files. I'm not going to go through all the files, but every file is built out here. We have a complete prep and die file where we track how many impressions, who owns that die, how many impressions have done, what was the last job, last estimate. But in order to have that logic happen, you have to put the die number on the estimate. So I'm going to go to the estimating system now, and you're going to see, again, icons at the top. So, and then you're going to have, now you have search capabilities here, but I'm going to start with the icons at the top. If you want to create your own report from what you're seeing on the screen, you can output to Excel. So the first icon is picking any field you want. I've only picked these 4 or 5 fields, and I'm going right to Excel. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you. The second icon allows each user, if I click this, I can put the item name all the way here at the beginning. So I can rearrange these fields. And then when I exit, it says, do you want to save those changes? I'm not going to, but if I did, it would then be saved. I kind of like the fields scenario that I have now. The other thing you could do is you can expand and shrink fields. The reason being is you want to get as much data on one screen load as you can, so you don't have to scroll left and right. You just want to scroll down. Now, if you want to search for information, let's say I want all the estimates for IBM. Again, I can get a lookup. The F1 key gives me a lookup. And I could search by customer number, which in our case it's alphanumeric, or the name, which typically is alphabetic. And I already know what it is. And I could just say click go, and it's going to show me all the estimates for IBM. Let's say I want all the FOLs. I don't even know if I have any FOLs. I do, I have one. So it would find it. Let's get a little more dynamic. If I wanted all the RSCs, there's a whole big list. But let's say I know the customer says it's 20 inches or greater on the length. So I can have a range, 20, he said it's between 20 and 22. I can click that, and here's all my estimates that have a length of 20 to 22. And I could do the same thing with width and depth. I could have a search by die number, by CAD number. Now you notice that little asterisk there. I'm going to get out and go back in. A lot of our fields have alphanumeric search. So let's just type in, let's do an asterisk and say tray. I'm not sure if I have any or not. Okay, I do. So anywhere it finds, this is the finished good number, this first field. The second field is the name. So if I double click there, oops, go here, you're going to see the word tray here, right here, and it's not the beginning. It's in the middle of the name. So I can do a wildcard search based on a text string by putting an asterisk in there. So the key is to keep using the same estimate for the same item, and you can just keep placing another order and another order and another order for the same estimate. It's also, if you're dealing with brokers, you want to find, that same item to make sure you haven't quoted it to the same person but with different brokers. So that's your search capability. Again, if I go to, you see there's a little star here, so that means I have departmental notes. And if I click that, and I'm highlighted on this estimate 1534, if I just double click that, I'll isolate it. Now you notice these notes automatically came in from the customer file. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go ahead and add an estimate. So how you add an estimate is just click the plus sign. Now there's a bunch of options here, one of which is you can import from CAD. I don't have the CAD system loaded on my desktop, and it gave me that nice little warning. But basically, you're going to put some information in, and it'll import your data directly from CAD. So that's one option. I'm just going to go ahead and add a brand new estimate, and I'm going to add some other different types of estimates, including partition and a farm out. It's just going to save keystrokes. So I'm just going to say add a new estimate via the plus sign. You notice I have a plus sign down here as well. Now I can press F3 on any field, and it gives me help on that field. Remember, everybody type that down on your notes, F3. I can press F1, and I get a lookup of the customers. Or I could just type it in. Once you learn the customer code, you'll just start typing it in. Let's say the customer gave me a part number 1537. I'm just some of our clients do use the estimate number, and that's a good little naming convention if the customer doesn't give you a part number. Then I'm going to type in a description, and I'm just going to say it's a 5x5 by, actually let's say it was a 1/2 inch. I like doing it this way by, let's say, and I could even say 0.25 by, but what I would like to do is be consistent, and I'd say -1/1/4. It's just real readable, in my opinion. And then I'll just say by 14. So this is going to appear on your quote form, on your invoice, on inventory reports, order backlog reports. So it's an important field, and we have lookups, obviously, by that field. The item number will get assigned when I add the order, but I could type it in right now. I can put in any estimate quantity, and if I press F1, I can enter more. So I can say I also want a quote for 2,500, 5,000, and let's say he wanted 10,000 to get a better price, but that was going to be 2 deliveries. The importance of putting a 2 in is it's going to change the freight cost from the carrier file that I explained a little earlier in the file maintenance logic. Again, you can press F1 and get a list of all your styles, and if you click one of these radio buttons, such as name, I could type RSC, and all my RSC types are going to be here, whether it be glued left, glued right, so on and so forth. But I know what I want to type in. I'm just going to type it in. I know my flute. It comes up with a default test, and then now all your sales categories is another file building process you have. So it could be trays, die cuts, farm outs, point of purchase displays, partitions. Those are good categories, by the way. I'm just going to call this boxes, and I'm going to say it's 5, Now this is in 16ths. We do have a toggle box to do it in 30 seconds as well. But I'm going to say this is 2.08, which is a half, 5.04, which is a quarter, by 14. And then I'm going to say it's one color. Now I'm done at this point. I'm just going to keep tabbing over to show you some of the fields. If this was a set or a build-up of some type, you could say it's so many per set. Let's say it was a partition. I need 5 of these and 3. You'd have that would be your quantity per set. But this is not a set, and this dictates whether you're going to manufacture it or farm it out. So I could either put an S. You can see down here P or M actually, purchased or manufactured. So if you click P for purchase, this tab here is going to open up, and then you can put in your vendor cost that they are quoting you for those boxes. What this is telling me is I put some limitations on my equipment, and it's saying the routing I built in my style files can't bring it in because of the limitations, and it says, do you want me to pick the next available machine? And I said yes. So all these tabs that I see here got built. I'm going to go into these. I could go right to the print tab right now. I could click the calculate button. Now here's where only the vendors that can make the sheet size that the system automatically calculated appear. But I could say pick the best price for each quantity. Now we've got various control parameters. I did not quote a requested quote for 1,500, but that's a board price break. So it's a way to get some extra sales. So I'm just going to say if they buy 1,600, I'm going to quote them that. These 2 little toggle boxes are important. The machine table that I showed you with all the machine standards, when I click these 2, it's going to go back to the machine file. If I click these, it's going to use whatever setup times and run speeds I put on the routing tab, which I have not showed you yet, but that's the importance of those 2 toggle boxes. So what this does is it calculates my cost per 1,000 for each quantity. There's a lot of other fields, out here, including contribution margin, board percentage, board per 1,000. But most importantly, it's your out-of-pocket costs, your full costs, and now I can play what-if games. And I could say, well, what if I want to mark up this $274, which is my material and labor, by 50%? And now watch my selling price change. So that's basically twice that. Or I may say, you know what, I want to mark up my full cost by 20%. I know a bunch of you are probably thinking, I wish I could get that kind of money. Well, this is the Advanced Box Corporation. I should say Advanced Packaging. Yeah, so that's my gist of humor for the day. There's another option here on pricing. You can price per MSF. And if I override this, I could say, well, I want to get $200 per MSF, and that'll change the price. Or lastly, I could just change the price, and then it recalculates my net and gross margins. Now this little Q button, when that's a yes, that means it's going to create a quote. So I could play what-if games on every single one of these, but obviously the default margin either comes from the customer file, that one tab I showed you where you can have different markups by style, by square footage, or it can come from the customer file as a standard markup. If you don't have either one of those built, it's going to come from the control file, which I also showed you. Once I like the pricing, I just press my quote button down here, and it creates a quote. And then I can get out of this, but before I do that, I'm going to go to the estimate. Oops, let me get out of this. Actually, I'm going to go out of this, and I'm going to go show you that quote. So I can go to the quote, and here's actually all the quotes that I've created. The last one is right here. So here's my 5.5 by 5.25, and a couple options I just want to show you when you create your quote, and I will be going back to the estimate. But you've got all your quantities, and you can have a default selling price. There's a control parameter which you could calculate this per 1,000 per each. You can set this up by customer. I've got it per 1,000, but you can always click here and reprice, which gives you the option to reprice per each, per M, per MSF, per case or bundle, or per lot. And then, of course, if you want to just create that quote, you just print it, email it. Like I said, if you email it, it's going to automatically go back to the customer file, that tab that showed all the contacts with their email address, and it's going to build the quote form. Now, your quote form typically would have a logo here, and it shows all the quantities, and it shows the price. And it's also good to have the releases so that they know if you're competing with somebody, hey, I quoted you 2,000, but that's 2 deliveries I quoted you. That's why our price is such. Now, it always lets you view it when you exit. It's now going to go out and build the email, and you notice 3 people are on this quotation to be sent. That came automatically from the customer file. And what your customer is going to see, excuse me, almost had to sneeze there. Your customer is going to see this, and this is exactly what you were just looking at, but it's converted to a PDF so your customer can see it very easily. So I'm going to go back to that estimate, and I'm just going to go through the details of each one. So this is the first tab you went to. If I went to the spec tab, this allows you, let me go to the box design tab first. It automatically calculates all your scoring allowances, okay, and it also can show you a 3D image. But if you want to change those scoring allowances, you can come here, I'm sorry, on this tab right here, and you can change the scoring tabs. So this was an RSC, so it's a 5 and whatever that happens to be. I believe it's an extra 2 inches, so it's probably 2 and 10/16 plus 2.02 scoring. But I can change this right here, and I can also change my score types. Now I do that by clicking the override button, and then when I'm done, I save it. But so override lets me change my scoring allowances. Okay, override also lets me change anything on here. But you notice everything is automatically calculated from the style file. If you want to take a look at the style file, just click on that little style button, and you'll see all the details. You say, oh, that doesn't look like the right scoring. And you can actually go to the C flute, and you could actually see what the, in the scores that are importing into the style. So that's an option if you, rate from the estimates. But it's useful when you're a new beginner. Same thing for the board code. You can go right here to the board, and you can actually go look at all your cost setup for all your vendors, and then come out and you rate back into the board code. Now the other thing I want to point out is you could use your binoculars, and if I wanted to click here, you could pick a CAD image, save that, and then when you go to the box design, there's your CAD image. So you don't have to use what's out there on our system, and if I want to just get rid of that, I just come back here and I get rid of it. So these are just images out on your disk drive. The other thing you could do is you could obviously pull in a die image, but if you said, let's say we had a printing die, and I just want to call it, I'll just call it P-die 1537. It says, hey, this does not exist. Do you want to create it? And it takes you right out to the prep and die file, and it builds your die file on the fly. That's a switch setting you have to turn on. But then once that is set into the estimate, when you get an order, it'll automatically start updating all the information in the die file. So the layout tab, this is just calculating your sheet size. And it always goes defaults to 1 out. And I just want to point out that the gross sheet is what's being slitted. So if you're going to have a slitter, you could have multiple out on your slitter. The net sheet size is what's going through your printing press. The die size is obviously going through your die cutter. And the blank size is actually going through your gluer. Now, could be, if it's all one up, it could be all one and the same, but you do have an option. For instance, let's say I want to cut this out of a stock sheet. I click the sheet calc button, I say, go look at all the 200C that's out there, and you'll notice it sorts it by the sheet with the least amount of waste down over here on the right. But that's all items because some of our clients, they can get sheets same day. So even if it's not in stock, they want it listed. But if I just want what's on hand, I click that, and now it's saying your best option is a 72 by 40 inch sheet, actually down here. So if I double click on that, it brings it in, and you notice the slitter now says 3 by 5. So that's going to use a slitter, two different cuts. If I want to set this all back to the way it was, I just tab here, and I just say I want to buy 200C, and it resets it all. You notice this field here, this is an override, so I can override my cost as a price per sheet, pound, MSF, tons, and so forth. If somebody was sending me the board and I wasn't buying it, I could come over here and I could say no charge. Okay, but I'm just going to assume I'm going to buy the sheets. The inks tab automatically brings in the inks. Very important, this field right here is what goes to your quote. So if I say one color, 2 panels, that's what's going to be on the quote. Now if I wanted to say GCMI, black, then that's what's going to be on the quote. Because you can have many colors, and this is just a summary of that. The unitization happens automatically. You notice this is a pattern G in our system, 6 stacks, and it tells you the maximum is 750. If I click here, click the override button, I can see all my unitization. You'll notice based on the customer's pallet, says 40 inches is his limitation for his racks, but it tells you can go higher if you want. So that's just an override button. If you want a system to automatically use its normal logic, you click the unit count button. The other thing I want to point out is if you want to override your freight charge, you can override down here. Your prep routing tab, since you had one color, it automatically brought in a printing plate. It brings in a default cost. You can change that. You can change the markup, and then the selling price. The other important thing is whether you're going to bill it separately. And again, you can get a look. You can see the messages down here. You can get a help message. You can see what does that mean. Well, S means you're going to separately charge for it. I means it's going to be in the cost per thousand. Okay. And then the next tab, before I leave this section here, I just want you to know that you can have different routing. So if I copy this, I'll say anything of 5,000 or above is going to use my Flexo folder gluer. But let's say down here, now if I can get away with it, hopefully I can run this. And this is where you put those attachments. If I had a handhold or something, I could put that attachment on there. And let's say, so a small quantity, I'm going to add. The add button is going to just let me bring in another machine. But when I'm saying add, it brings in the standards. So the setup times and the run speeds are automatically going to be brought in. Let's see, he's too big or too small. Same with that guy. I'll hand glue it. I can't even hand glue it. Anyhow, you get the idea. I'm going to go see if I can find a gluer that will run. Well, I don't know about that one, but all right, you get the idea. I can have multiple routings if the machine fits. One thing I also want to point out is the add standards means you're going to add a machine, but you're going to manually type in the setup times and the run speed and the waste factors. If you click the import button, you can just click import and save, and it's going to bring in the machine standards from the machine file. Override lets me come over here and say, well, I can set that up in 15 minutes, but it's going to run at 5,000 per hour, and I'm only going to have 1% waste. So you can change all those with the override. Click the import, it's going to reset it from the machine table. So now it's all back to the standards. Miscellaneous tab, any kind of outside subcontract work, you can put this in. Maybe litho labels might be a good example. And then you can put the setup charge, set up for material labor, or you can put a charge for your materials. You know, so you could say I can buy that for $20 up to $1,000, $18 up to $2,500, $16, and then, oops. I would always use the last one to be unlimited, so I'll say $14. And then again, you could say I'm going to include it in the cost per thousand, or I could charge it separately, but I could also mark it up by a percentage. The special materials down here on the bottom, now this is not coming directly from the raw materials file. When this becomes a job, it will create a raw material. But this here is predetermined raw materials that you built and you know the cost. So you put those into the vendor cost tab. But you notice, for instance, if I was doing a point of purchase displays that needed hooks, I might say I need 20 hooks for that display. So you can just pull that from the raw materials file. And I've already explained the box, these other tabs. So that's the anatomy of an estimate. Now I just want to show you another couple things. Let's say I want to do an assemble partition. I will say, okay, it's for Abbott Laboratories. And it immediately goes to this screen. So I can actually say it's a assembled, actually the part number I'll say assembled partition, and I'll just call it, what do I call it here? I'm going to call it a 12 by 9 by 5 because that's what I'm making. And I'll just say this is assembled partition, and now I'm actually going to say it's a 12. And then I could say this is a P, and hopefully I get this right. I think the first one will be a P3. And I'm going to say every slot is 3 inches by 9, and this is a P5. Oops. That means 5 slot partition, 3 by 3. And then I'll say the height is 5 inches, and I'll say I need 5,000 of those, and I'm going to put that on 200B. And then how many forms do I want? In other words, I could put that length and the width on one sheet, or I can have separate sheets. And then the other thing for all displays and kits of any kind or sets, is it assembled or unassembled? You notice it's not unitized when it's unassembled, but when it's assembled, it's automatically unitized, meaning we have to put them together and we're going to sell it as a unitized kit. Now, this is the only screen you have to do for a partition. Okay, I don't have the right cell dimensions, but anyhow. And I got some machines that aren't properly importing. But you notice it automatically builds both length and width, and it builds everything that I would normally have to do manually. And it basically says, here's my 5 slot, and it's going to actually go to, show you your 2 different designs, your 3 slot, your 5 slot, and your, oops, I thought I had a 3D image out there for that. I guess I don't. Oh, there it is. So all this can automatically happen, and it automatically brings in the full size. Now, if I would have had that on a die cutter, I could say, okay, I'm cutting that on a die cutter, and it's 9 by 5 out, or I could say it's 5 by 5 out. So I can adjust these things for each sheet. So I'll do this. I'll say that's on a 56-inch die cutter, and I'm only going to do that 3 by 3. And here, this example, I'm going to cut it on my splitter, and then I'm going to cut it on my die cutter. So those are options. And the same thing is true if I was going to do a farm out. It's just going to build everything automatically. Now, once I do this screen one time, the next farm out, most of it will be automatically built. But that screen is all you need to do, and it's going to build everything for you. Now, what I'm going to do is just show you a couple examples of other things that I built. For instance, if I click down here on this estimate 1523, this was a point of purchase display. Now, you'll notice it's Halloween 123, but I'm going to click this set button and update, and this is what's going to be billed or invoiced to the client. So it's a Halloween display. That's the part number. I want to point out that the part number is the important field from a cost standpoint, because you can have, as an example, in that partition, you could have 2 or 3 sheets. Maybe the length is on the first sheet, the width is on the second sheet, and maybe the length and width are on the third sheet. Well, in order to cost that length partition, we need to have that part number to know it's the same part number on sheet 1 as it is on sheet 3, so that it takes the total cost of sheet 1, total cost percentage of the length partition on sheet 3, add them together to come up with a total cost for that length partition. So the part number is the key to our costing. But this is the parent item that's going to be billed, and you'll notice the consistency. This is what the customer called it. They're not always that consistent, but we have a numbering schema with our system. Well, I haven't actually created a finished good item for this one. Let me actually got this. This was a repeat item. Let me show you 1128. Okay, this one has a finished good item on it. It's actually, I moved it. Here it is right here. So now you can see the finished good item here is 1 through 10. But our system numbered this, and what the first letter means is it's a point of purchase display. Dell Labs is the customer code, and happens to be the first item I ever made for, so it's item number 1, and then A is revision A, and that's just 1 through 10 is the component number of the set. Now the benefit, it's all one estimate, but if I go to the box design screen, I could say next, next, and I could see all the different CAD images. Okay, so that's a point of purchase display is nothing more than doing one estimate, but you're going to click the add button and you're going to add a form. So when you add a form, it's going to add another component. That's all it's doing. So if this was hollow, and you notice it automatically increments it from the customer part number, which was Halloween display. So if I would have called it Halloween, and then I would just add the same thing I did for a single item RSC. I'm just going to keep adding components, Now I'm just going to get out of that. I want to show you another option, a more complicated partition, just to show you some more capabilities. So this is a multiple part partition, and the simplest way to show it to you is just go to the box design. And this is the die image, if you will. That's the second item, the third item, the fourth item, the fifth item. I'm going to go back to the beginning by clicking this arrow key, but now I'm going to go through the CAD image. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I want to go to the 3D image. So now it's got this. A customer actually sent this to me, actually a prospect, and then they became a customer. And then now you'll notice it's more defined image. Okay, and then what I could also do is I could click this graphic image, so I can attach all kinds of images to an estimate. And if I expand this, you can see this is actually a multi-part partition, and you can see some kind of a machine part going in through each one of these. And all this is available if you put it in the estimating system to display out on the plant floor. So you can also be, now that attachment, just so you know, was under the graphic image, but you could have 2D die image, CAD image. So these are 4 different types of attachments. If that's not enough, you can come up here to the paper clip, and actually this was a job ticket they sent me to duplicate. And so I had just attached this entire job ticket of theirs, and so just as a reference. And then what I did was I kind of cut this and saved this image as a die image. I could have saved this as a 3D image right here, quite honestly. Actually, that was a different estimate. But anyhow, you get the idea. So the paper clip is any kind of an attachment, and then there again is your book icon. The only thing I want to mention before I kind of wrap up is this book icon are what we call spec notes, and you can see you can do it for any one of the components. What spec notes are notes specific to the finished good item code, whereas the department notes are tied to the estimate. So if you had, as an example again, a length partition that was used on a lot of different sets or kits, for instance, let's go to, let's see, this estimate right here. This happens to be an RSC with 2 partitions. If you wanted to write notes about that particular item, because that item could be used on a lot of different kits, which include boxes, then you put the note for the item, and then it automatically will appear on every other estimate. So it depends if you want the note to be attached to the item or to the estimate as to which one of these tabs you use. This is for the estimate, this is for the estimate, this one's for the item. So I'm going to wrap this up. I've given you a lot of information. The only other thing I do want to point out is you obviously have a bunch of reports. Perhaps this one here might be one of the most useful, where you can get a list of estimates, what hasn't been booked, and you can actually print it by sales rep and say, hey, follow up on all these. Why haven't we got the order? Just also want to point out the order number here. If you don't see an order number on the browser, that means you don't have it's not booked. So these orders have not been booked. And you can always just click on the yellow tab here, and it sorts it ascending. Any field that's yellow, you can click. It'll go ascending, descending. So these are all the estimates that we booked orders for. If I click it again, these are all the estimates which have not been booked. So you could see that directly right from this screen. But if you want to report, and I just want to also mention that this is our standard report writer, and it has an option to pick whatever fields you want. These are all the available fields on the left-hand side. These are what you've actually picked. And again, you could go to Excel, you can go to the printer screen. This is all saved by user ID. So if a sales rep wanted to print this, he could actually type in his salesman number and the fields that he wanted to print, and whenever he went to print this report, it would automatically be set for him. He wouldn't have to change anything. So each sales rep could set their IDs, their limits and what have you, and then it would automatically print. So this would print, in this case, for just from last year to this year, all the estimates that we that have not been booked. Okay. Now, the last thing I do want to mention there is we have a report writer tool beyond this, which can take any report and you can move it to a unattended batch process. And it can actually increment this, let's say, 1 day at a time. So he could actually set this up so he would get an email either every day or every week, and he would get an email of all the quotes that were sent out that haven't been booked. And he could have that email to follow up. So I think I pretty much covered everything. I'm not sure if I went over an hour or not, but we're done. So we're going to open up the forum to questions.
Yeah. Let me take over now, Joe. So thank you very much, and thank everybody for attending. We're going to open up the floor for questions, but just want you to know that this is being recorded, so we will be able to send this link out to you, and you'll be able to review this, go back, forth, pause, and absorb this information again later. I do have one question so far, Joe. Let's go ahead and answer these questions. So the first question is, if the blank size will run on a machine, but the box width might be too narrow for the machine, is there a way to put that in the machine info so you know it won't run on that machine?
Yes. That is part of the limitations. Actually, we're expanding this, but there's actually a parameter here. If I would have to change that parameter for that particular dimension. So it's called CE panel, quite honestly. Right now it's set to one thing. We're going to have it so it can do both, but right now if I change that, CE panel that's called, and then if I go back to that machine, you'll see it'll be a width min maximum criteria. So down here now you can see that I've got a box width min, box width, I'm sorry, that's length max, and then the same thing for box width and box length. So this is the sheet minimum, sheet maximum, that front to back, which is typically your sheet width, and side to side is typically your sheet length. There's your minimum, maximum, and there's also can be a trim allowance. But this is the box limitations, okay? And then this is a slot limitation. So hopefully that answered her question.
Okay, okay. So I'm looking for some more questions. If you could type your questions in down in the chat box, send them to the organizer. I'll get those. So the next question, Joe, is where would you enter a broker's commission percent in an estimate?
Okay, the sales rep, whether it be a broker or internal sales rep, this is a percentage right here on the specs tab. But ideally, you want to go to the customer accounting file maintenance, and in the sales reps, you would create a broker, an account number for your broker. So you actually add a broker type, and then you would put his commission percentage. And keep in mind, you can have different commission percentages. This is really geared for a sales rep selling to a broker right here. But So the sales rep, if he sold to a broker, this would be his commission percentage. If it was a house account, you could have a different commission percentage. If it was new business, a different percentage. Walk-in business, a different percentage. But basically, this is the customer type. You have different customers types that you assign to different customers. And so you don't have to do it. And then we can also have different commissions based on the product category. So as an example, boxes could be one price, farm outs could be another commission percentage, point of purchase displays could be another commission percentage, packaging supplies, stock boxes, they can all be different commission percentages, but the key is you're going to set up the broker here. You basically just add a new type of, we call him, box broker, and he's treated like a sales rep. Okay, and then you could put some kind of a default commission for him, if you will. And then you could just, put any kind of a territory or, define a territory, but then for that broker, you now got a box broker, and then you can, again, define different commissions by customer type or category. Now, you can see this is a blank, is for all categories, so I could delete all these and just have one, for all categories and a flat percentage. But it's in the sales rep file is the ideal place to do it, but you can always override it in the estimate spec tab right here. Okay, so if I wanted to override, I could override. Now that I added that broker, I could get a lookup, and I could say, here's my box broker, and he's getting 20%. Okay?
Okay, Joe. So how about estimating freight? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The freight, the carrier is imported to the Inks pack screen. So you notice it's our truck and the delivery zone is 50, okay? Well, where does that come from? I believe this was customer IBM. So I started off, I believe, early in the meeting with the customer file and the customer ship to file. So in the ship to file, you're going to put what is the normal carrier. In this case, it's your truck, and we're saying his delivery zone is 25. What we're also saying is he has a maximum height of 45 inches based on the pallet. So that's going to automatically unitize. So now we're going to know how many pallets we need to ship him based on each estimate quantity. Then, and that transfers to the estimate, but then it has to go to the common carrier, what we call the truck file, truck/common carrier. So it could be UPS, FedEx, but it's our truck, okay, for the main location. So I double click that, and as you can see here, I've got this set up. I'm going to charge him per pallet. So then I go to the matrix, and since this was 25, not within 25 miles, it's right here. So I click that, and here's my grid over here on the left, okay? So what I'm saying is I have a flat charge of $50, okay, up to 25 miles for delivery zone 25, and it says I'm going to charge up to the first 5 pallets, I'm going to charge $10 per pallet. So in other words, anything less than 5 pallets, it's really $50. Then beyond 5 pallets, I'm going to charge $8. So, but it's still going to be a minimum of 50. So what's 8 times 6? It's 48. So it'd still be 50. But if it was 9 pallets, it would be 9 times 8, and that would be my freight charge. I also want to point out that if I said it was, let's just, for example, it was 10 pallet shipping, 2 deliveries, it'd be 10 times 8, which is $80, but the second delivery would be $50. We use this minimum rate for an extra delivery charge besides the minimum. But it all comes from it's a combination of the delivery zone and the pallet in the ship to file, and then the truck that's in the delivery zone, and the rates are in the truck carrier file right here. So again, when you go to this estimate, you'll see that the truck carrier automatically came in, and the zone is automatically imported as well. So it has all the information it needs right here. It knows how many you're putting on a pallet. So if this estimate was for 18,000 boxes, it would be 1 pallet. because I'm putting 18,000 on this, but I could override this, obviously. So let's say I was putting 3,600 on a pallet. So now if I was shipping 36,000 boxes, it would be 10 pallets. So in that example, it would be $80. But if it was 2 deliveries, it would be $130. Okay? So it's how many, but again, it could be by MSF or it could be by weight as well. And then when you look at the estimate, I didn't do this estimate. This is a different estimate. Let me go back to the estimate I did earlier. The first estimate I did. Anyhow, you get the idea. Oh, here it is down here. Okay. So all that's listed on your estimate printout, which I actually didn't even go through. I didn't go through that, but your printout has all your costs, and on the bottom line of your down here is your freight charge. Now the freight is on a per thousand basis. So this estimate that I'm looking at is for 1,000. So you can see I've highlighted 1,000. If I wanted to see the details for 10,000, I would click here, then click my view, and now I've got the 10,000 quantity, and I can move this over. I could shrink this a little, but at the bottom we show up to 5 quantities, but these are all on a per thousand basis. So in this example, this 1992 divided by 10,000, because that's the quantity, times 1,000 is 199, and you can see that 199 drop down to right here under my direct materials. This estimate, every capital letter is a subtotal. So till you get to the bottom line suggested selling price. But your freight is right here, calculated for you. Okay?
Thank you, Joe. We need some more questions. Anybody else have a question for Joe? Please type it into the chat box, and we'll get that answered for you. So go ahead and enter any questions that you have. We want to make sure we get them answered for you today. Anybody else have a question? Looks like we may be out of questions, Joe. So I guess I'll say thank you very much today for attending. We really appreciate you as a customer. Wait, we have another question. If my estimate page doesn't show freight, does that mean freight is not in the estimate? Did you get that, Joe?
Yeah, I would imagine that's what that means. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how let me go back to the estimate I did earlier. I'm not 100% sure how we have multiple estimate printouts, by the way, that you can choose from. I'm not 100% certain how all of them print, but it sounds to me like if there's no freight charge, it's probably not printing this line. But if you build the tables that I explained, you will get freight on here.
Okay. All right. So we'll assume that if there's no freight on the estimate, it may not print that line. That's what we think.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah. Whoever asked that question, please email help@advantzware.com, and we can log in and investigate that issue for you.
Right. Okay. I have another question here. Can you do pallet patterns on partitions?
For an assembled partition, no. Individual, the individual blanks, yes. So each one of these, we have a pattern for each part. But you know what? Actually, I'm kind of lying. Form 00 is for your assembled partition, but we do not calculate that automatically. But you could put a pattern in there for the assembled partition, but that is Form 00. In other words, this is Form 1 and Form 2. If I click my Go-To button here, you can see form, sheet, die. Form 1 is my length partition. Form 2 is my width partition. So when I click either one of these and I go to the inks pack screen, see this is this is blank 1 or form 1, I should say. And then if I go to this one, now they happen to be the same, but this is form 2. If I click this arrow over here, it goes backwards, and that is form 00. This is actually what's used for the freight calculation for any assembled set, whether it be in a partition, point of purchase display, anything that's assembled that's shipping as a complete set. The freight and unitization comes from here. The only thing I can say is it's not automatic. You would have to pick this out. The only thing that I also might want to point out is we are integrating some unitization programs such as CAPE systems, I believe, is we're going to be integrating with. So if the CAPE system software does it, then we could import that data from CAPE.
Great. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions. Here's another question for you. If a box can run on more than one machine, how does the system decide which one is the best?
It comes from the style file routing. So the RSC, if it's in this example, let's go to the generic one here. Doesn't matter actually, but let's say this was a 35 by 35 inch box. Okay, well, it's not that. It would go. It's not there. It would have to come to this table. So that's only to 10. This is the 20. And so 65 would be right here. So it's going to go to the 1-2 pattern. So it's going to go to the press and the gluer. Okay. Now, part of our setting up when we do training is we help you define what these should be. But essentially, what we do when we go out and train, we say is what machines, in this example, make an RSC. So you write down those machines, and I mean the main machines. You know, the printing presses typically that'll make that style. You write those machines down, and then what you do is you go to the machine file, and let's just say I'm going to go to ZLM, and you write down the minimum width, the minimum front to back width, the maximum width, the minimum length, the maximum width. And those 4 dimensions for each machine are going to go on this style routing. Okay? So you would put the min-max lengths of all the machines that make an RSC, and then min-max widths of all the machines that make an RSC. And then where they intersect, that's where you put your default routing. You remember, I went through here and I explained you're going to define all your possible routings for each machine. And then try to keep the number ones for the slitter passes and the even ones for non-slitter. So it's the same thing. So it's real easy to build that style routing so that if you want the small quantity to always include a slitter, these would always be, in this case, this would be a 1, a 1, a 1. Notice the only thing I have to do is lower it by 1. That's all you should have to do. So then that's not valid, but then the larger one would all be even. So what it's going to do, it's going to pull it from here. There is no picking. You basically have pre-routed based on the style routing table. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any other questions? If you would enter your question in the chat box, we'll get Joe to answer those for you. So let's give it a minute or two, Joe, see if we got some more questions coming in. Again, I will be I am recording this, and I will be posting that to our YouTube channel later today. So I will be sending out a link with this recording, so you'll be able to go back and review it. Looks like we may be out of questions, Joe.
Okay.
So I'd like to say thank you to everyone for attending today. We'll be doing more of these. Be sure to check our website link that I sent out to stay up to date on what webinars we're going to be doing this year. But we have quite a few. We'll be doing them about every other week or so on various topics. Joe will be doing a lot of these types of sessions, the beginner sessions. We can get down to the basics and help you learn how to use the system. So again, I'm going to stop the recording